Good evening, everyone. Well, today being Australia Day, which I'm only just making it into Australia Day, I thought I'd read out this David versus Goliath, the Aussie True Blue version. I can't do it as well as Col Stringer, who's the gentleman that actually created this amazing piece of work. But if you haven't heard of Col Stringer, go check him out. He's got some great stuff. I'm pretty sure he's got a YouTube channel. I'll link to him. I know of at least one sermon I can link to that he did at Lighthouse, but I'll give this a read. So now the Anzacs stood on the mountain on one side of the valley, and the Philistine bushwhackers stood on the other. The enemy had a great lump of a bloke called Goliath, who was so tall his mates called him Lofty. Fair dinkum, he was so tall that if he fell over, he would have been halfway home. He had a skid lid of solid brass on his noggin, armour all over him, and a spear as big as a stringy bark tree. Goliath stood and hollered out, "Come on out and fight, you mob of dingoes. Pick out a bloke and let's see what he's made of. And if he can bump me off, we'll be your rouseabouts and vice versa." This really scared the living daylights out of the Anzacs. It put the wind up and good and proper. If only we had Ned Kelly here, they said. Even the Prime Minister was packing it. Now Dave was the youngest son of Jesse, from a one-horse town out behind the Black Stump. Jesse had 8 kids and was over the hill and just about to kick the bucket. The 3 oldest boys were light horsemen in the army, but Dave worked for his old man as a sheep musterer. One day, Dad says to Dave, "Come here, kid, and take this tucker to your brothers in the army. Give a bit to the CO as well, so he'll give your brothers a fair go. Now stop mucking about, or I'll give you a smack in the ear hole." So Dave got up before the crows, picked up his swag and headed off to see his brothers. It took so long, he had to stop for smoko on the way. Boil the billy and have a cuppa. Meanwhile, the Anzacs were really packing it. They were so desperate the Prime Minister even offered to get his daughter hitched to the first bloke who'd take on the big yobbo. Now she was quite a shealer, and they would get a pile of dough to boot, but still no one would have a go. When Dave found one of his brothers, he said, "G'day, Bluey, how you going, mate?" Bluey then told Dave what Goliath had said, and Dave replied, "Who does that great Nong think he is? He's got more front than a rat with that gold teeth. Just let me have a go at that big galah." Bluey really did his block. "What do you think you are, you little drongo? You'd better stop shooting your mouth off, or you'll come a real cropper." "Struth," said Dave. "Don't jump down me throat. You couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag, you little bludger," said Bluey. "I reckon I could," replied Dave. "I'm not a no-hoper." When Dave's second elder brother, Bazza, heard that what Dave was saying, he laughed his head off and said, "Stone the crows, Dave. What do you think this is, Bush Week?" Dave's third brother, Chooker, just looked at Dave like he'd gone fair round the bend and said, "Hey, you little dag, why don't you just get back to the bush where you belong?" "Fair go," said Dave. Then he took off yelling, "You blokes are as thick as a brick." Dave then went to see the PM to tell him he would give it a go, and the PM said, "You've got 2 chances of killing that old Lofty, Buckley's and none." "Oh, I don't know," said Dave. "The Lord helped me kill a dingo and a croc with my bare hands. I reckon he'll help me knock this bludger's block off." When the PM saw that Dave was fair dinkum, he finally gave in and tried to give Dave a great stack of armour. Dave could hardly walk with it on. "This is hopeless," he said. "Struth! I'm trussed up like a Don Bradman in all this flash gear." Then he laughed and he said, "No worries, mate. She'll be right." So Dave walked out to meet Goliath, carrying only his Shanghai. When the giant saw him, he laughed his head off, saying, "What do you think I am, kid? A galah? Just take one step closer and you'll get the biggest knuckle sandwich you've ever seen." "Come off the grass," Dave yelled back. "Just because you got a head like a hubcap, you think you're a big wheel. Why, I've seen better heads on a beer, mate. And I've got some news for you. I'll do you like a dinner in the name of the Lord." Goliath took off running towards him like a mad scrubber bull. Dave popped a gibber on his Shanghai, whirled it around his head, and let it go. It went like a rocket. It hit lofty fair in the scone. "How's that?" shouted all the Anzacs with one voice. Dave rocked old Goliath to sleep. Something entered his noggin for the first time. He went out like a light. Dave ran over and took out the giant sword and lopped off his noggin. "Good on you, mate," yelled all the diggers, as they all came running down the side of the hill singing, "Come on, Aussie, come on." Later on, the PM asked his Aussider who Dave bloke was and where he came from. His reply was that Dave came from the other side of the black stump, where the crows fly backwards to keep the dust out of their eyes. The PM shook his head and said, "What a little ripper." See, I don't know if you can see the little cartoon that says, "Stone the crows, have a gander at that great lump, so you'd better head on a beer, sport." But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the poem, and check out Col Stringer. He's really great. He's just a really fun Aussie pastor who calls a spade and not a shovel. Anyway, you have a great day. Bless you.